Welcome to Unicorns and Biscuits, the business podcast where we explore innovative strategies and stories with industry leaders. Today's a real treat. We're thrilled, Sophie and I are thrilled to have Beth Jackson with us, one of the financial experts behind Two Sisters Accounting. Years of hands-on experience, a refreshingly no-nonsense approach, as I'm sure you'll find out. And Beth helps business owners to eliminate the fear of finances, simplify maybe bookkeeping, and possibly even help them start to enjoy the numbers side of business. Beth, it's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I mean, I try and make it enjoyable. I cannot make promises on that front, though.
Very good.
Yeah, so I think trying and at least simplifying and making it less painful is probably what most people are looking for. So let's start with your journey in inverted commas. So you went into payroll and tax after school, and built your career in sort of those sorts of qualifications and real world experiences. But I'm always a bit hesitant about the word passion, but kind of what sparked your real interest in this, and how did it evolve into co-leading Two Sisters Accounting?
It was all a bit of an accident, if I'm perfectly honest. I am not a 5-year plan person, never have been. I don't know how you plan for the future. Everything changes. So I got through my first year of college, really was just bored of education. I love learning new stuff, but sitting in the classroom learning new stuff slowly kills me. So I think I dropped out of college about 2 weeks into my second year. But that was that weird patch. We had AS level. So I had an AS level in maths, and was just applying for jobs here, there and everywhere. Got a job in a payroll department because of that AS level, and sort of went, okay, I can do this. And if I'm honest, a bit of the motivation was, there's always money in number-based things. If I go into payroll, if I get into accounting, I will earn money doing this, which I think is a good enough reason. When you're making career decisions at 18, I can earn an income from this. It's quite a good one. And I just got really lucky that I really liked it and sort of was good at it. So then when Jessie, the other half of the business, did it all properly, she went to university, she worked for KPMG, got chartered, did all of that. And we were both sort of hating working for other people. We just had really mutual skills that really worked. So, and then I discovered that I love working with small businesses and I find it all really fun. So it was just very, the way life goes.
Very good. Well, look, you mentioned Jessie there, the other part of Two Sisters Accounting, which is a great name, right? And you've kind of become known, if I can, as I was saying earlier, you sort of simplify these complex financial matters. People often get a bit confused with everything that they have to do, whether they're working for themselves or running a small or even a large business. What's your approach to making tax, payroll, accounting maybe less daunting for business owners? What could you share with us in terms of your approach, Beth?
A lot of it comes from the fact that I taught myself a lot of this. I am not very good at being bored. So when I was working in a small accountancy practice as the person doing all the payroll sort of only really keeps you busy, maybe 2 weeks a month. And then by the time I'd done all the admin and stuff, I had a lot of time on my hands. So I just started picking up tax returns, getting involved in them, working out how to do sole trader accounts, working out how to do bookkeeping, and had managers there who would review what I was doing. But when you're in a room full of people talking about stuff as well, you sort of learn it all. But I picked it up because I taught myself it, and I picked it up from listening to people talk about it and then trying to work out, wait, how does that make sense? Instead of learning it from a textbook, it's much easier for me to explain it to people because I'm not coming from a textbook point of view. I'm not coming from it academically. I'm coming it from a real world. This is how you do it. This is how I learned it. So I know I can teach this to people. And suddenly that makes it loads more understandable for small business owners because I'm not using what the textbook says. And sometimes that bothers people. But ultimately, most of what the textbooks teaches you have to tear apart anyway because it doesn't translate into real world stuff because HMRC rules don't. So that's why I can make it simple. And then I really care about small businesses understanding this because I want small businesses to succeed. And you can only succeed when you know this stuff. So it's sort of, I can make it simple because that's how I learned it. And then I care about people understanding it. So I will find a way to make it work.
Yeah, amazing. And I think that's one of the things, isn't it, is that with many disciplines, understanding the theory and then understanding how you actually apply that in practice are often two very different things. So like in my experience, you know, and obviously, you know, from a personal experience as well, running my own business, you know, the overwhelm with the sort of the serious stuff, things like HMRC, VAT thresholds, employment costs, all the things that you know are really quite important, and you might get a brown letter in the post. They can feel very overwhelming. So what are the most common fears, do you think, or misconceptions that your clients have, and how do you help them move past those?
I think for a lot of people, it's a sort of basics that they get most confused by, like VAT is, as an example, sort of there's this huge misconception about, you know, well, I'm not over the £90,000 threshold, so even though I'm registered for that, I don't need to charge people that. It's, well, no, it's a in system, so you can voluntarily register, but once you're in, you're in. So it's a lot of explaining about that. Equally for limited companies, they get very confused about, but why have I got 2 tax returns and 2 sets of tax to pay? You know, and it's explaining the 2 different legal entities and all that sort of stuff. The benefit of being a small business is that the same questions come up time and time again. So we get really used to answering them. And we've learned over the years what explanations make sense, what explanations don't make sense. And then also, you know, we'll explain it one way. If that doesn't work, let's explain it another way, and sort of build out our toolkit of how to help people with that. And I think ultimately, very few small businesses know what they're doing in the start, but it's the ones that are willing to learn, take advice, listen, and take it all on board that will then succeed and do well with it all. So I don't expect any small business owner to come into it knowing everything 100%, but they do need to be willing to learn it.
I like that a lot, because you were saying earlier, weren't you, Beth, that you kind of have to almost translate the rules, which can be that daunting piece that Sophie's talking about, you know, where everything's coming at you at once and you're trying to figure it out. And then even the simple example that you gave about, well, I'm under the threshold, so do I or don't I charge VAT? You know, they seem like very simple questions to people that have maybe been in this world for a long time. But for a lot of people, this is the stuff that they need help with. And it brings me on to something I really want to ask you, because I know that, you know, with your organization, you work across everything from bureaus, maybe pension firms, big businesses, local small businesses, individuals, etc., that need this advice. But has your background and experience helped you in shaping and understanding what that individual person needs from an accountancy company, from a person like yourself or Jess?
So ultimately, the more time you spend as a business owner speaking to people and understanding their struggles, the more it helps. And sort of a background, my first job was in an umbrella company. Actually, my official first job was in the Swift Cover claims department. So when people crashed their car, they called me and shouted at me. And once you've explained for the 100th time that your voluntary excess doesn't mean you choose whether you pay it, it means that you picked the amount, and people are going, no, I know I picked £1,500, but that's voluntary and I'm not going to pay it. Like that sort of helps you get very used to being shouted at by people at a very young age. So that, you know, builds a resilience, and then everything through from there, again, working for a umbrella company and payroll, people calling to shout at me for stealing all their money and they can't pay their kids, because obviously I get all the tax that was being deducted from them. That had nothing to do with the government, which I do think helps as a business owner, because you get that resilience part. So you get very used to that, which as a business owner goes 100 miles. So I do think the sort of everybody's history leads them to do what they do really well. And I've just sort of collected those skills over the years. I've forgotten what the crux of the question was because I started waffling.
Well, I was just wondering whether all those different experiences, people shouting at you and everything since then, has that helped you shape your understanding of what a person needs when they're looking for your services? Because it's daunting. It can be overwhelming for some people.
It has, because you get used to dealing with people. And I think for business owners, that's one of the core skills. You just have to be good at dealing with people, with your clients. And then once you get good at speaking to people, reading people, understanding people, I very quickly know, like, I'm speaking to someone, I'll be like, right, we're starting from ground zero. We need to go really, really basic. This is going to take a lot of time explaining and going over things. Or you speak to people and you can see they have been Googling for days and have a pretty good idea of stuff. They just need some gaps filling in, and then we can sort of already start on some of the nicer stuff with them about sort of checking their profits make sense and that they're saving tax. And there's sort of different levels that you go in with every client. I imagine Sophie has its marketing. You'll have some people that go, I don't actually know how to log into a social media platform. What am I doing? Or you'll have people that are like, I'm doing all of this. I need you to fine tune it. So I think it's just one of those things, you definitely adapt it to each individual.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, you know, it's I think from a marketing perspective, you know, asking the question what somebody needs is, you know, what is the outcome that they're looking for? And that's not always the thing that they're buying, right? So, you know, they might say, I need someone to do my bookkeeping. What they're actually asking for is, can you give me peace of mind because I am sweating about the fact that I've got this wrong? You know, and it's two very different things, isn't it? So like, I mean, this is always quite difficult to do, I think, in terms of like essential tips, because you're like, to whom, it's, you know, context based and so on. But, you know, in terms of managing the financial side of running a business and aimed at small businesses, so let's assume that they're already off the starting blocks, but they're beginning to start to take some of this stuff seriously and they're looking to grow, because that's who we're sort of talking about and to with this podcast. Like, what are the essential tips, or the sort of the absolutely don't do's even, you know, like do everything as you want, but for God's sake, don't forget X, or something like that? Have you got a couple you can share with us?
Absolutely. My forever tip is save tax as you earn the money. If you're VAT registered, hide that VAT money from yourself. So as soon as someone pays you, tuck 20% away. Banks have rules that will do this for you automatically. So if you're VAT registered, absolutely save that. And then I tend to say for sort of service-based businesses, if you save about 30% every time you get paid, that tends to work out as a fairly safe number to cover all your tax that you'll have to pay. If you're like a product-based business or you have really high overheads, you will need to adjust that slightly. But for most sort of service-based businesses, we don't have huge amounts going out. By the time you save 30%, it will sort of allow for your expenses, your tax-free allowances, the jiggles, and that works with sole traders and limited companies. Obviously, it's not perfect maths, but if you are saving that much, it's going to be near enough, and you're not going to be scrabbling to pay your tax bill because you've spent all the money. Also, if you're in a limited company, you're unlikely to pay yourself too much, because if you've already saved your tax away, the money that you can pay yourself isn't sat in that current account. So you're unlikely to pay yourself too much and getting problems with dividends and not having the money available and all that sort of stuff. So tip number one is just save your tax as you go. But just HMRC don't care why you've spent their money. They just care that you've spent their money and they want it. So if you find that you cannot save your tax because you can't afford the lifestyle that you want to live without spending that tax money, that's something you need to look at. Which sort of leads me into your pricing and stuff. You need to think really carefully about pricing. We see a lot of businesses who sort of say, but I can't charge more because nobody will work with me if I charge more. And it's like, well, then you have to have a really harsh conversation with yourself about whether your business is actually viable and what you're doing. Because, you know, if you're at the end of a year, if you can just about pay your tax bill and pay yourself 10 grand a year, if you're lucky, what you doing? Why are you doing this? You need to sort of really think through, is your business viable? What are you doing? There's loads of different maths and calculations you can do to work that out, but it's something you need to think about really, really seriously. Because I can't keep speaking to small businesses that are making no money and working 50-hour weeks and crying at the end of it because they've got no cash left. It's sad for everyone. Don't use your business account as a personal account, and don't use your personal account as a business account. Have separate bank accounts. You will hate yourself if you get them muddled up. It makes life so much harder and you're more likely to get in trouble with HMRC. I think those are the key ones, and just keep on top of stuff. If you're not sure, ask someone. And most people really overcomplicate stuff. It's probably not as hard as you think it is. It's just scary, and once you get used to it, it's really easy. Well, not really easy, I'll take that back, but it's not as hard, it's not as bad as you think it is. You just need to face it. Like, open the HMRC letters. They're probably not that mean. They're probably just a reminder for something. It's just all about getting comfortable with it. Get your head out the sand and look at it.
I like that a lot, because it kind of really syncs up with what Sophie said a moment ago, which is, in the marketing world, you've got to sort of figure out what's the outcome that you're looking for. And you're kind of saying the same thing here, Beth. It's a bit bespoke. Everybody has different objectives and outcomes that they're looking for. And if you're running a business and you're barely scraping any money out of it, and you've got all the, like, what's it all for? And it brings me on to the next thing, which is, obviously a business doesn't stay static. Some people have a little lifestyle business. They're quite happy with it and they get used to it, and they open the HMRC or the taxman's letters, and they work with an accountant company and people like yourselves. But you also have to focus as a business changes, doesn't it? Because a lot of the time it can go up, it can go down, it can grow like a rocket ship. So you have to think about supporting businesses at every stage, and maybe even doing things now that are going to pay off in the future. And it's not a one size fits all approach, is it, Beth?
No, it's not at all. Every business is different, because obviously the person that's running the business is different. So everything from there is different. You have 2 coaching businesses, they're completely different. 2 marketing businesses, they're completely different. And like you say, everyone's goals are different, and how much people want to work and what their version of success is. So it all varies. So it is all very bespoke. Obviously, the core of it, doing a set of accounts and tax return, that is, that's not that different. It's numbers going into boxes on a form. That's fairly bog standard. It's more the day-to-day and what business owners worry about and how we can make their lives easier, which changes. And again, I think that's the same for every business owner. If you've sort of got a one-size-fits-all approach in business, you're very lucky and quite possibly not doing things right.
I like that. If you're doing that, it's probably wrong. And I think, sometimes, like we mentioned about perceptions earlier on, and one of the things in my world that I'm often bumping up against is the perception that that the person looking after the marketing, that their pay is a cost. And I'm always like, no, your budget is what you're going to spend it on, not on the person doing the stuff. That's something different. And I think probably you come across similar sort of things in the fact that you were saying that payroll is often seen as a cost center, but you view it as an opportunity for strategy. So, like, from that perspective, how can business owners better manage their growing workforce costs? And obviously that links into like what price they charge potentially in terms of their profit margins and so on. Like, how can they manage it without compromising on like compliance or culture, or what is it? How do you explain what those opportunities are?
With businesses, it's just really important. Like, it's really easy to get stuck looking at the numbers. Oh, this is going to cost me this much, and then panic and go, oh, no, that's much too expensive, I'm not paying that, or I'm not doing that, which is good to keep costs under control. But you also need to think about, what's it going to bring me? Like, yeah, getting somebody on board might cost you 30 grand a year, but if they are going to vastly improve customer satisfaction, get you a bunch more clients, and take a load of stuff off your plate, where you can then actually go out and bill 70 grand a year just because you've shifted that stuff, and you've got clients that are happier and they're staying with you for longer, it's sort of a no-brainer. You need to always look at the 2 sides of what you're doing, because everything has a cost, but it also has a benefit. Like, when you're spending money on new software, you always think, what's this bringing me? Why am I buying this? Is this worth £7.50 a month? And it's the same with people, as horrible as that sounds, but when you're spending on people, are they bringing that benefit? It's why, like in recruitment firms, they're often fairly savage about sacking people, because you've got 6 months to prove that your cost is worth the benefit. So if you're not bringing in at least what they're paying you plus some, they're going to get rid of you. And you can sort of do the same as a business owner. You just need to look at both sides. Yes, I'm going to be paying this, but is it bringing me benefit? And that benefit doesn't always have to be financial, I think, is really important to remember. If it's, as a business owner, you're hiring someone in and it's simply going to make you calmer, less stressed, take some off your plate, stop you screaming at everyone because you're on the brink of burnout, that is a benefit and is probably worth the cost. So I think overall it's just sort of weighing up, is it worth spending money on? And that isn't a not one size fits all answer.
Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely does. I want to come back to something you said earlier, Beth, because it's been ruminating up here, and you were saying, you know, it's bog standard, I think was the term that you used, putting numbers into boxes. And I wanted to come back to that because I know a lot of people listening or watching to this episode will be saying, well, it's all digital now. It's all online now. You know, the days of filling out a bit of paper and posting it in maybe has changed. And lots of companies, you know, whether it's Sage or Xero or a host of others, they have online sort of accounting tools, and maybe the accountant's recommending something to them to use that the accountant's familiar with using. But there must be, and I think HMRC has its own tool, or maybe they're moving and want you to work with a third-party service provider now. I'm not sure. And different countries have different tools and also different accounting standards in place, right? So, or different processes, I should say. So, is there any sort of time-saving tools that you recommend? Is there any habits that you recommend? Just as, you know, some sort of key takeaways for people checking in with us today. You know, do you recommend ways to streamline the bookkeeping, the accounting, and maybe get rid of some of that stress and uncertainty that people can often experience?
Yeah, so there are loads of tools available. It's sort of there. You have your classic bookkeeping software, which is names like Xero, QuickBooks, Free Agent, Sage. And what they do is they help you keep track of stuff day to day. So you have your bank in there, all your banking transactions go in there, and then you can say, I spent, you know, I spent this money. Oh, that's that money for that invoice coming in, and it helps you keep track of stuff. And that's sort of the core of bookkeeping, is keeping track of what's going on day to day. And if you're VAT registered, you'll have to have one of those because you have to file your VAT return through it. When it actually comes to filing tax returns and filing accounts and stuff, some of these softwares can just about submit something, but they're not often very good, which is often why you then go directly to HMRC or have an accountant do it for you, because we have special software, and it very much is, we're taking that information and then putting it into the format that HMRC want it to be in, and checking that you've not done anything wrong or claimed for stuff you shouldn't have done and all that sort of stuff. So if you are using something like Xero or QuickBooks or Free Agent, you're better off, you need to keep it up to date. It's great having a software, but if you then only go in once a year and do stuff with it, it's a headache, because then suddenly it's taking you 2 days, you're trying to remember what you spent money on 18 months ago, you haven't got a clue what's going on, and you get overwhelmed, you don't want to do it. If you are using software and you're keeping on top of it, it's so much easier. It's much easier doing 5 minutes a day, if that, of just going through click, click, match, match, done, done, as opposed to doing it at the end of the year. If you don't like doing it daily, monthly, whatever, but you need to keep on top of it as you go. That makes life a lot easier. Equally with scanning your receipts and all that sort of stuff, it's much easier to scan one receipt as you get it, then get a list from us when we're doing your bookkeeping, and we go, right, here's 30 receipts I need you to find, and you're going, right, where have I put these things? Like, what box is it in? What purse is it in? I've thrown it away, I don't have it. And you get stressed and it's annoying. So keeping on top of stuff is absolutely the thing. I would obviously say, if you hate doing it, if it's taking up loads of your time, if you look at your software and get overwhelmed, pay someone to do it. Again, is the cost worth the benefit? If it's draining your time and your energy, it probably is. We can't take over scanning receipts for you. That, unfortunately, is always down to the business owner, and is always the bit that nobody wants to do. Everyone wants to pass off, and you've got to do it. But that's definitely one of the things. I think also some people get quite overwhelmed thinking about software. You know, what should they pay for? Which one should they use? Which one's best? It's really personal preference. They will do the same thing in very different ways. It's about finding the one that you like the most. And depending on who you bank with, you might be able to get a free, you might be able to get discounts, all that sort of stuff. So there's software wise, that would be my tip. Just keep on top of it. Running a business wise, again, just keep an eye on what's going on. Like, make sure you're looking at your bank account. How much money have you got? What's coming in and out? If you're on software, have a look at your profit and loss. Are you actually making the money you think that you're making? Do you need to reconsider your pricing? Because maybe you're not actually making any profit anywhere, and just because you've got loads of money coming in doesn't mean you're actually making any money, because that's a huge misconception among small businesses. And just sort of, it's really overwhelming as a new small business to think about all these things, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, and then the more successful you're going to be as a business.
Well, there's some great tips. Thanks very much indeed, Beth, because I think, as you're saying, the more you stay on top of things and deal with the small things as they come up, the less hassle it probably is. And I loved your advice about, look, if this is draining you and it's just not in your sort of wheelhouse, pay somebody to do it because it has to be done. I think that's great, simple advice, but great advice. And also, I just want to mention before I move on to the next thing is, for anybody who's seen Sophie's lights flicker a couple of times and thinks it's a lights issue, it's not. It's probably the paparazzi because of her new book launch. So don't worry. Don't panic. Okay. Look, moving on. I want to thank Beth for sharing all those insights, tips, experiences with Sophie and I today. And to all our listeners who want to maybe find out more about Two Sisters Accounting, where can people find you, Beth? Where's the best place to point them to?
Go on any social media platform and you will see my face too often. It's how I know my marketing's working. When people go, every time I go on the internet, I see your face. I'm like, good, that's what we're aiming for. So I'm Beth Jackson on LinkedIn. I'm Ask Beth Accounting on Instagram and TikTok. The website, Two Sisters Accounting. You will find me if you want to find me.
That's amazing. Yes, hopefully that promotion and awareness will be doing its job. I think it's always a downside, isn't it, though, that if you have one particular photo that you use and everyone associates it with you, you're then stuck with that look for the next 20 years. Well, listen, thank you so much, Beth, for joining us. That concludes this particular episode of Unicorns and Biscuits. Thank you very much for spending some time with us. And we hope that you've learned something that you can take away that will help you move your business forward. And the usual, please like, follow, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you so much.